live. So today I'm going to give you kind of a quick kind of first introduction to programming, and we're going to do kind of the Hello World program in Python. So it's probably the simplest program possible, and cover just a little bit of the basics of the print function. But the first thing I want to do is cover using Anaconda and Jupyter Notebooks. So the first thing you want to do is find on your computer in kind of the applications area. On a Mac would be in the applications folder, or from your taskbar on Windows, Anaconda Navigator. So that's what we're going to start up. So we just double click Anaconda Navigator. And this will just take a couple seconds to load up. Here we see it initializing. And the program that we're going to use, which we'll see in a second, is Jupyter Notebook. So here's the Jupyter Notebook. In some cases, when you guys first set this up, you might actually have to hit the install button, but I already have it installed. So we're going to launch Jupyter, and this is going to be our principal programming environment for this class, these notebooks, because they're really nice, because they're kind of interactive environments, and we can actually add text to them in a really nice manner, which I'll show you guys in a second. So we launch it. You'll probably see a terminal window come up, and that's firing up Python and then firing up the Jupyter program. And what we'll come to is Jupyter, which is going to be run in your web browser. And the first thing I'm going to suggest to do is it's going to be in your home directory. So here you're going to see a bunch of different folders. These are my home directory, actually a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to go into the class directory that I have for this class. So that's in my box sync folder. And then I'm going to go through all my different folders and where are you located. And I have my CHBE 494 folder. So I'll double click that. Actually, come back here, double clicked it too fast. And this is going to be my directory. And then we're going to go to week 1. So this is the first week. That's how I organized it. And now we're in this directory, and we can start up a new notebook. And so we're going to come under new. And what we want to do is select Python 3 for this. So that's kind of the version of Python we're going to be using. Some of you, depending on your setup, may also see other languages here, because Python's not the only language that uses these Jupyter notebooks. For example, I have Julia, which is another programming language installed on my computer. We're not going to be covering Julia in this class, but only Python. But it's kind of similar to Python. It's actually a cool language to check out if you have the chance. Anyway, I click on Python 3, and now I start up my Jupyter notebook. And so this is kind of the basic look of the notebook. Right here, if you see my cursor, these are the cells. Right now we just have one cell, but eventually we're going to see more cells, and this is where the coding is going to be done. But the first thing I'm going to do is change the title or the name of this file. So right now it's untitled, so I can just click it, and maybe we'll just call it my first program. And then I'm going to hit the rename button. And now, as you see, it's named my first program. And if I come back to this tab over here, we'll actually see my program. It's my first program. And then the extension is .ipynb, so IPython notebook. And it also tells me that it's running right now. So classically, the first program we're going to do is we're going to get Python to print out the string hello world. And so what we're going to do is activate the cell. So I'm just going to click into it, and you'll see the cursor blinking. So that tells us that it's active. And then we're just going to use the print function. So I'm going to type print, and then I'm going to put parentheses, and then I'm going to say hello world. And this is typically the first program that anyone ever writes. Actually, if you go to Wikipedia for most programming languages, they'll actually show you how to write hello world in that program, just to kind of give you a sense of what the syntax is. Now, to run this cell, I just simply hit Shift Return or Shift Enter, and what you see is the output, which in this case is just simply hello world. Now I can modify this cell. Well, let me step back a second. So the first thing you notice is once I run it, it actually auto-generates another cell below. Right? That's if I want to write more code below this cell, but we're just going to operate in this one cell for the time being. So I can come back here, and I can modify it. So I could maybe say goodbye world. And then if I hit Shift Enter, I can have goodbye world. Now, I don't have to have one line of code in this cell. I can do multiple lines of code. So I can maybe print in the first line, hello world, with parentheses, so hello world. And then it's going to also print goodbye world. Now this blank space doesn't mean anything in Python. I could put a bunch of blank spaces, or I could have no blank spaces. It's all interpreted exactly the same way. I hit Shift Enter, and I have hello world and goodbye world. Now some of the things once you have code is what we want to do is add comments to the code. And comments are basically things that we write in our program that are not read by the interpreter. So these are just for the human that's writing or reading that program rather than the interpreter itself. So the way you write comments, so one of the ways in Python is I just use a hashtag, and I could say, maybe you'll put some information here. I could say this program prints hello world and goodbye world. And I run it, and the code's exactly the same because this part is not interpreted. And it's a good practice in general to add lots of comments to your code. It makes it a lot easier to interpret it, particularly once we start getting into math and lots of equations and lots of variables. Sometimes code can become quite difficult to understand, and comments can help you a lot in letting you know, kind of using basically human language or English language in our case, rather than kind of computer language for interpretation. Now, one other thing we can do is we can also add comments. We can add comments really anywhere. I could put another comment here, right? And it's just not going to change anything, right? Because it's not read. But we can also put on the same line as our code. So basically anything to the right of the hashtag is a comment. So I could say this line prints hello world. And then down here I could say this line, wrong command, this line prints goodbye world. And same kind of behavior here. Again, this part of the code that I'm highlighting here is not read. It's only kind of the stuff that's kind of highlighted is the part that's read. More commonly, I don't like this syntax. I'd rather just cut and paste this, put this here, and grab this, put this here, and kind of put the comment above the command. And I think that's a little bit nicer for syntax. One of the things we can do in our notebooks is that we can use Markdown code. And Markdown code's nice for kind of making documents where we kind of put in formatted text. So normally what you're going to do is you're going to have a comment maybe above your code. This is different from the comments of your, like in the code itself. This is just kind of basically documentation or kind of documentation for your notebook. So what I'm going to do here is I have the cell active, and I'm just going to insert basically a cell above. So here we have a cell above. And then I'm going to come down to this drop-down menu, and rather than use code, I'm going to use Markdown for this. And so this is Markdown similar to HTML. So I click kind of the Markdown option, and basically this becomes just kind of a comment area. So typically what I like to use is I like to put a header. And so the way you do a header is with a hashtag. So I could say my first program. The number of kind of hashtags determines the size. So if I have 1, it's really big. But if I do 2, 3, it gets a little bit smaller. I tend to like 3. And then below it, I can just say, put some random text. And I could say, this program prints hello world. Put it in quotes. Hello world. And goodbye world. And then if I want to basically format this, I just hit Shift Enter, and now I have kind of this comment here. And if you look at the notebooks that I'll start putting on Compass, and then eventually on the GitHub account when I get around to that, just give me guys about a week for that, you'll see that I have a lot of kind of documentation in the code. Now, just a couple other things with just the print function, right? So this is pretty much the simplest program. Let's just come down to a new cell. Is one of the things I can do with print is I can print actually multiple strings. So basically anything between quotes, and it can be double or single quotes as long as the 2 quotes match themselves, is called a string. So what I could do is I could print 2 separate strings. I could do print hello, and then I could print a second string. I could do world here. And what it's going to do is print hello world, and basically it prints the first thing, the first element, and this is technically a list that it's processing. We'll talk about lists later. But we have a list of strings. So the first element in the list is hello. It prints it, puts a space there, prints the second element of the list, which is world. And then at the end of the line, it kind of gives a new line, which we'll get to in a second. But I could put another thing here. I could maybe put 3 apostrophes, and then I run it, and now I have hello world apostrophes. Now, if you want to get rid of these spaces or change it to something else, we can add an option. So if I put another comma here, and I do sep, and I just put empty quotes. So what this is saying is the separation is being defined by the string. And since there's nothing there, there's going to be no separation. Now I run it, and it collapses all the strings together, and I have hello world with no spaces. But I could also put things different. I could put like a star dash star. And now if I run it, I'll have this separation. So you can play lots of tricks with this. One other thing with print is every time we print, there's always a new line. So if I go back to this code up here, what I have is print hello world. And what it does is it creates a new line before it prints the next string. So it automatically puts a new line after hello world. So that's why hello world's up here, and then goodbye world's down here. Now if I took the same code and I put hello world, and then I put end is equal to empty quotes, and then I print goodbye world, what you're going to find out is now they're going to be collapsed into one string. So after the end of this command, it doesn't add a new line, which is kind of the default. It really just doesn't do anything. And then it directly starts going to the goodbye world, so they're all kind of exactly on the same line. Again, I can play tricks. I could put maybe a couple spaces, and at the end, it's going to put a couple spaces there. So one other thing is we can introduce new lines in the middle of strings. So I could say print hello. Actually, another way to do this is with single strings. So I could do hello. Right? I don't have to use double quotes. I can put a new line command here, and I can put world. And what you're going to find out is it's going to print hello, and then this dash n here is basically the symbol for a new line character. So it's going to be hello world. So here we have hello. Then it puts a new line, so the new line happens, and then I have the world here. If I wanted to maybe put a couple new lines here, I could do /n, 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 and now I'm going to have basically one new line character, which is here, another new line character, which is there, and then to the hello world. One thing you might wonder is what happens if you actually want to print out a -n. If I want to print that out, so I could say print the symbol for a new line is, and now I'm going to just do /n, and when you hit return, you're going to see the symbol for a new line is /n. So you just put a double slash there, and that kind of overrides the single slash to give you back your original symbol. Of course, it's not printing both of these slashes. It's actually only printing the one slash. Now, if I wanted 2 slashes, of course, I'd have to put another one. Whoop. Did I do wrong there? Nope. I'll have to come back to that. We have the number new line. I actually don't know off the top of my head how to do 2 slashes. I'll get back to you guys on the next video on that. So just kind of, this is like a little bit of an overview on the print function. I can't really think of anything else. We'll come back to this a lot, but print's kind of useful when we want to have output for our program. So typically we're going to do a calculation, maybe lots of calculations, and you might want to print out different kinds of answers, and we're going to use the print command for that. As always, if you need more things on options, you can always look at the documentation. And if you Google print Python, you'll find lots of information. So if I come up to a new command and I type print Python, probably the first thing it'll come back to is I can see the print statement, right? And here's going to give me all the different information about the print statement. Often this is not very useful kind of going through this, but when you want to print different kinds of things, you typically can Google the answer. And as I mentioned, you often find good answers on Stack Exchange. So going forward, I'm going to put out a lot of short videos rather than having these go an hour long like a traditional class. I'm going to try to keep these around 10 minutes, just a single topic. And the next one I'll talk about is doing calculations in Python, and I'll put that up very soon. Anyway, stay safe. If you have questions, put them in the comment section or post your questions to Piazza. And let me know how whether this makes sense, how these videos are working. As I mentioned, I'm new to this whole, online, social distancing education. So, if I'm doing something you like, let me know. If I'm doing something you don't like, let me know. And if you have suggestions for making the classes better, please let me know. All right. Thank you, guys. See ya.